Hi guys, it's Talisha, and today we are going way back where my passion first started, and that is my riding journey. I was born and raised in the northern beaches of Sydney. My whole entire life I have loved animals. Horses have always been my favourites though. The highlight would always be going for holidays at my grandparents' farm in the Southern Highlands and getting to play with all their baby lambs and just be out on the countryside. It was always where I enjoyed being the most. I just thrived being outside and being with all the animals. Any animal I possibly could. I just was always in my zone. As a kid, I loved horses from day one, and I can remember at this age, my room was covered wall to wall of posters of the Saddle Club or any horses I could get from magazines. My parents encouraged it by buying me horse toys, which is just where my passion grew. Every toy I owned was a horse. It was crazy. It was just horse from horse. I would even sleep with big stuffed toys of horses. Now, living in Sydney, I was never able to ride regularly, just due to it being too expensive for where I lived. But that didn't put me off. Any fair or just any kind person that would offer me a pony ride, I would take it in an instant. I just would do anything to be around horses. When I got a little bit older, I started getting presents for my birthday or Christmas for a trail ride at a local riding school, which I thrived and just loved getting them so much. I would look forward to birthdays just to get that 1 or 2 trail rides a year. My wonderful auntie worked for a lady in the Southern Highlands that owned a few horses and ponies. My auntie would help me ride this pony called Coco, which was where it all started and where I actually started to be able to ride properly. I am 12 at this stage and I'm teaching myself to ride and canter, and it was all just so exciting for me. I lived for school holidays when I got to go down to the Southern Highlands and ride some horses. In 2013, we relocated to the Southern Highlands, and that's when I met Bravo. Bravo was a 17-hand high warm blood that was way too much horse for me at the time, and I pretty much spent most of my time cantering around out of control in the arena. He was beautiful, but things just didn't work out for him. He was owned by my neighbour at the time. We then move on to Milo and Donnie. Donnie is the Palomino. I unfortunately don't have any clips of me riding him, but this is Milo. Milo's the pony that really started my inner speed demon, I should say. I kept teaching myself to ride and gaining more experience by just trying a bit of everything. Both Milo and Donnie were owned by the same lady that owned Coco. I spent a lot of my time galloping around the paddocks. That was honestly my favourite thing to do. I just loved going full pelt gallop. And he was so fun to do it on. He was around 12 hands high, a little Welsh pony, and he was honestly just a superstar. Apparently, I just rode around with no hands constantly on this pony. The same lady also owned this stunning thoroughbred called Slinky. Slinky was a beautiful older thoroughbred. I think he was around 20, and again, I just did a bit of everything on him. This was my first ever time jumping. I have always had a lot of confidence with riding, hence why I chose to do dumb things like this. Galloping for the first time riding this horse bareback resulted in me falling and bouncing off the ground. But yes, there's never been a time when I've been riding that I haven't been confident. I've always been quite lucky to just have a lot of confidence, and I pretty much will get on any horse, even way back now when I was pretty much a beginner rider, but I just would do anything and happily gallop any horse up the paddock. We then go on to Super. Super was such a beautiful horse, and I started from the ground up with him as he hadn't been ridden for at least 5 to 8 years before I started riding him again. I gained his trust from the ground and then got on his back. This was his first time having a rider on for, yeah, as I said, about 5 to 8 years. Me being still a very green rider, this horse was awesome for me. He taught me a lot. This was my first time cantering him up a paddock. He gave me a little pig root, and then I went back down, tried again, and he was a saint. He was an awesome horse. Another off-the-track thoroughbred. He was 12 at the time of this video, and this was my first lesson on him. He was such a kind horse, and I had such an amazing connection with him. He was a true superstar and I adored him so much. He was when I really started to start jumping. It is now 2015 around this time and I'm still not riding consistently. I was riding about once or twice a week at this point. This was my first ever competition and it was also Super's first ever competition. Nothing like a green horse, green rider. No, but he was honestly a saint. He was just a bit nervy on the ground, but he was a true gentleman, this horse. This was my first show jump round at a competition. It was 25 centimetres, and I thought I'd just put it all in just so you guys can actually watch it. Super was never going to be a show jumper, and I'm not saying that to be, nasty or anything towards him. He just truly didn't enjoy it. I didn't know this at the time. You can kind of just tell when you watch it back. But he just did it because he wanted to do it for me. The jumps always scared him, especially when they change any different to what he's used to. He'd never seen coloured poles before, and this puddle didn't help, of course. We didn't even finish the course, and it was 25 centimetres. Now I have some more clips of us show jumping, and it just shows you that he didn't want to do it. He never really wanted to show jump, but he was just doing it because I wanted him to. He was a star though. He really tried and had some nice little stacks, but landed on my feet. He was a very cool horse though. And now Clancy comes into it. Clancy was owned by my boss who I worked for after school. Clancy was offered to me for free to be my own horse. I took him up on the offer, but later decided that I didn't want him and gave him back, which was always going to be the case, as I realised that I just didn't have a connection with him and I loved Super too much. I actually tried to buy Super off his current owner at the time, but she decided not to sell him, which was really sad for me because I loved that horse. And then we go on to Mango. Mango again was owned by my boss at the time, who I worked for after school. She was a 3-year-old Brumby that had been under saddle for a few weeks and at the time was too much horse for me now that I look back on it. This was the first time a horse bolted on me, if you could even call it a bolt. I was trying to get off her at the time. I took my feet out of the stirrups and she just, you can see it all. She was a funny little horse. She was actually wild and my boss had caught her from the Stowy Mountains as she was injured. And he broke her in himself and then said, "Hey, you want a pony to ride? Here you go." I learned a lot from this pony though because, being put on so many green ponies at a green stage myself taught me a lot. And keep in mind at this stage I'm still completely self-taught, which you can probably tell from my riding, but hey, we've changed since then. She had a thing for bolting because, I doubt she'd been taught anything else, considering she hadn't done much before me. But she was fun, and we eventually got over all these issues, which is quite surprising considering how green I was myself, and she ended up selling on really easily. And then we go on to my heart horse, Jeopardy. This was my first time riding Jeopardy. At the time, she was owned by my boss as well, and I was going to just be riding her for fun until he sold her. But on this very, very first ride, I fell in love with her, and she was just everything I wanted, and honestly, everything I needed in a horse. She was 20 at the time. She stood at what we thought was 14.1, later realised she's only 13.3. But she was quiet, she was just everything I needed for a first pony, and I don't know where I'd be without her today. This was my first competition on her, and my second competition ever. I tried everything on her, she was just so fun. This was my first time doing sporting. We actually didn't make it round the second barrel, but unfortunately I don't have a video of that. We pretty much ran into the barrel, actually. We always had issues with show jumping, but she loved cross country. She was a careful horse and we overcame our issues with show jumping eventually after having refusal after refusal. And then she was just a star in sporting when I really worked out how to make her go and get those turns tighter. She improved with her flat work, which was something that she struggled with, and so did I. We are now at the end of 2016 when I got surprised with my first little baby horse. This is the day I got Kai. He was a birthday present for me, and I've known this little guy since day one, so this was a very special thing for me. I worked with him and helped raise him and bottle feed him as a baby, as he was rejected by his mother. He came to me not knowing anything. I taught him everything from the ground up, apart from being the first one to actually get on his back. He was such an interesting young horse and taught me so much. I've never had to take a horse from knowing literally nothing and not even being able to catch him to being able to get ready to actually get on his back. In between playing around with Kai and introducing him to everything, I was blessed with the opportunity to meet my first client horses. This is Finesse, and the little dapple grey is Reggie. I met the lovely owner riding at Barrel Show on Jeopardy, and she saw me ride and asked if I wanted to campaign her ponies at this show with her. This is my first time doing harness ever, so it was really fun. This led to many other different ag shows riding Finesse, this pony here, which we took home many places and titles, and here I'm out at Robertson Show showing Jeopardy a bit more. Jep was always still competing and my main priority through all of this. She improved at her sporting and so did I. It was always so much fun and one of my favourite things to do on her, as you guys would have known from watching the start of this video. Sorry, super quick little freeze frame to say now is when I actually started getting lessons for the first time. Up until now, I was completely self-taught. This was my first time competing at the Sydney Royal Easter Show. I was lucky enough to go on Finesse, and on these 2 weeks spent at Sydney, I was able to ride many different horses and meet so many amazing people. It was just such a great opportunity and just an amazing atmosphere to compete at. I will definitely never forget competing at my first Sydney Royal. It was not one of my best shows, but I was still really proud of how I went handling such a big show and such a big atmosphere. I had so much fun and yeah, I'll never forget it. We then move on to my next horse I started riding for someone, which is Casius. Casius was an older schoolmaster dressage horse. I didn't ride him for very long as I decided to cut ties with the owner just due to personal reasons, but I do have more rides on him. Now Jeopardy and I start focusing on our dressage as that was where my passion was, as well as doing our first 75cm show jump round, which was very exciting considering she's not a very confident jumper. Between this all, I'm still working with Kai on the ground and ponying him, getting him over little fears like bridges and anything we possibly could, just introducing him to literally everything, which is why he is so bomb-proof now. Here's the last ride I had on Casius. I had many in between, of course, but yes, I then chose that this was not something I wanted to do. I did not want to ride for this lady, which was why I stopped. He was an awesome horse, though. Meanwhile, Jep and I started training our elementary work, doing shoulder ins and travers. Travers were always something she really struggled with. And here we are doing a bit of counter-canter and just really starting to nail some of that elementary work. Here we are doing a canter leg yield. And here we are at Canberra Regional Championships. This was my first big regionals and we went better than I expected. I then started to teach Kai how to lunge. As you can see, he's grown up quite a bit now. He is now a 2-year-old in these videos. And this is when we struck our first obstacle. But as you can see, this is a few weeks later. He eventually had less of an attitude and started lunging really nicely. But it just shows that he has a bit of sass, and that's when it first started to come out. Here's Jep doing her travers at a trot. And now moving on to my next client horse that I met, Little Romeo. He's a superstar, this pony. The plan was to start competing him, but a lot of things got in the way, and I mean, Corona stopped it all now, even though this was about a year or so ago. Here is Kai being dropped off at the breakers. And now we are at 2019, and this was the first show of the year. I'm competing on two of my friends' horses, Johnny and Rebel, and it was such a great day, just having a lot of fun doing the show ring stuff. And now we have my first ride on Kai. This was really exciting. He had been a little superstar at the breakers, and it was just so fun to finally be on this little boy's back. He's 2.5 at this point, and it was just awesome. It's such a nice feeling. And now we have barrel show. This was actually my first time doing an elementary test, as well as Jep's. As you can see, her shoulder ins are getting so much better. Her walk to canners were definitely something that needed to be worked on, but she tried really hard, and that's all that mattered. Now we are home with Kai, and I had one ride on him until I threw him out to spell for a few months and just grow up and be a baby. And now I have my first Royal on Jep. This is Bathurst Royal of 2019, and we did the dressage and the Pony Club ring where she was just a superstar. She nailed it. We even got reserve champion on the Pony Club day. These are all the ribbons we got from that day. Another ride on Little Romeo. Things were getting a little bit more serious, and I was starting to get more time to travel to ride him. I really hope we can do more in the future. Now I started riding people's horses at Pony Club when they were starting to have issues with them, with little things, like this pony, for example, had a mighty buck for his little rider and would constantly throw her off. So I was asked to hop on him and ride him round and get him over his little tantrums, because it was literally just cheekiness. And it's so much fun. I love jumping on other people's ponies when they're having problems and stuff. And he ended up being a little superstar and jumping the jumps, and look, he's cantering and not bucking. It's so much fun. Here we are at our first ever nationals. This is the Young Rider Nationals 2019, and Jep and I did the prelim tests and the novices. We placed top 8 3 out of 4 tests we did, and we were only just out of the top 8 in the other one. She was awesome. I was so happy. We got some awesome photos from my amazing sponsor, Liz. Shout out to you, Liz. I love these photos. Now Kai is back from his break, and I am starting to ride him again. This was a few rides in. I started him back in the round pen as we had a lot of issues. But that's a whole nother video. I've done a whole video just about Kai. You guys can go find that, and it goes through my whole journey with him so far. But then we took him to his first Pony Club day, which is also his first ever proper outing, and he was a superstar. Literally did not put a foot wrong, did everything perfect, and it just showed how good it was that I got him out at such a young age prior to him being broken in. As you can see now, Jep is starting to really nail her elementary work and get her walk to canners sorted. Her collection has improved a lot, and so has my riding. Her show jumping's still going strong. I think this was actually our last show jump round we did together before I decided to retire her from show jumping. Not for a particular reason, but just because of her age. She could still do it and is healthy enough, but I didn't want to push our luck. We got age champion, won all our dressage tests and show jumping, and yeah. Now, the best show ever. Pony Club Nationals 2019. I went into this show as a reserve. I did not actually qualify, but someone dropped out, therefore I got to go because I was first reserve. We did 3 novice tests, Jep placing top 3 in all tests with 2 seconds and a third. She was one of the only ponies. There was 2 ponies in this level in our age group. The rest were large horses and mostly warm bloods. With our performances and consistency, we walked away with the novice age champion, and the age being 16 to 21 year olds. Sorry, 17 to 21 year olds. It was something I did not expect. I was hoping to end up midfield, so to walk away as national champions to this day still blows me away on my little 24-year-old, at the time, she's now 25, but my little 24-year-old riding pony. It was just so surreal, and it'll always be a day I remember. Just a little superstar. She was definitely one of, if not the oldest pony there at this competition. I'd say she was the oldest there, but I'm not sure. Here we have more elementary tests. We did our first 3B, which is where the walk pirouettes were starting to be introduced. This was another regional championship, and we walked away winning all our tests and getting champions and getting a lot of fun other little prizes as well. As you can see, all our little goodie bags. Kai, as you can see, massive difference in the last video that you saw of him, really starting to improve with his flat work and strengthen up and get that higher frame, which he finds quite difficult. He likes keeping his head long and low, which I did the whole entire time until this ride here, and then I started to introduce him that higher frame once he was strong enough. Now I introduce Bambi to you all. Bambi had been a horse I'd been searching for about 12 months. I wanted my next dressage superstar to take over from the legend Pony Jep, and I found her after 12 months of searching. She was everything I wanted, and I was not settling on one little possible thing with this horse. I took her to her first outing not long after owning her. This is just at Pony Club. She was a very green horse. She's just turned 5 at this time and had one small outing at a schooling dressage competition. I am not one to believe that dressage horses should only do dressage, so as you can see here, I am bending her around the sporting at Pony Club where she was just a champion. A dressage bred horse, but can do literally everything. Here I am at my local sports award nights where I won an award for October of Senior Sportsman of the Month for my and Jep's performances at Pony Club Nationals. This was really exciting, so I thought I'd add it. Now we are at Kai again. I chose the discipline I wanted to do with him as this was what he most enjoyed, and it's the stock work. My plan is to do team penning and do a lot of the cow sports and sporting and bring out my inner hoon again with him, as well as doing a bit of show jumping. This is just what he thrives with. He's doing his walk to canners, his Canada halts. He is such a smart young horse, and being an Australian stock horse, this is what his breed is meant to be doing, which is why he enjoys it so much. So I was so glad that I finally found what he wanted to do. And this is my first show on Bambi. This was her first ever time competing at a proper show and with such a big environment, as you can see, with the rides and everything. She was perfect. She was not silly at all, had a couple moments, but just got better with every class. And we also walked away with reserve champion. Here we're doing a few more schooling rides on Bambi. This was when our shows got cancelled due to coronavirus, so we got to really start focusing on our training at home. We had so many shows planned, but it's been good to just really focus on her training, especially her dressage work and teaching her laterals. She's now schooling shoulder ins, travers, and counter canners, so elementary work. Even though when I bought her, she struggled to get around a prelim test without disuniting in the canter. And here is one of my latest rides on Jep, just going through all our little laterals. Because of the coronavirus, I have decided to retire Jep from competitions. I will still be riding her for fun and doing little things like that, but she has been retired due to this whole coronavirus, as our states and national championships that she had qualified for had been cancelled. Originally this year, 2020, was going to be her last year of competing anyway, just as she's 25 now, and I wanted to retire her while she's at her peak. But I decided that obviously, because we are not having any competitions this year, to end her on the best note I possibly could, which was national champion of last year. That was our last proper big comp, and I think it was a perfect spot to end it. Now for last, I will show you my most recent ride on Kai and how much he is progressing and how much he has grown and physically matured. He is filling out so nicely and starting to really understand the dressage work. Even though I plan to do a lot of cow work with him and sporting, I always believe that a horse needs a strong foundation in dressage, as it's just so important, especially for their development and their muscles. And he's coming along so well. So that's my riding journey so far, everyone. I hope you really enjoyed this video. It's been so much fun to make, and I hope you enjoy hearing how I started and how I got to where I am currently. So thank you so much for watching. Bye, guys!